I'm going to go over a very, very important class. The top 10 contract mistakes that will kill your escrow. I always tell people, listen, opening an escrow, it's great. It's a great feeling. And it's relatively easy, but professionals get the escrows to the finish line. Professionals will anticipate what may potentially go south before it even happens, so that we learn how to pivot. So I want to go over what are some of the things that could go wrong during an escrow, that if we don't address them as early as possible, they will kill your deals. And we are trying to prevent that happens, especially during the fourth quarter. So number one, missing timelines and deadlines. Not calendaring or scheduling your inspection on time. Remember, you can have a transaction coordinator handle your file, but you're the buyer's agent. You're the listing agent. You have to follow up with the other party and everybody else, as a matter of fact. So if you're the buyer agent and you just got your offer accepted, you open escrow, congratulations. Remember, you have to stay on top of your deadlines and your timelines. Did your buyer wire the deposit within 2 business days? Because if not, guess what? We might be out of contract and the seller has the right to cancel for non-performance. You're thinking you have an escrow, and guess what? You don't. Because you didn't remind your buyer that they had to wire their earnest money deposit within 2 business days. That is the responsibility of the buyer's agent to remind the buyer. Another thing is, after the EMD or the earnest money deposit is in, you got to schedule your home inspection. Usually, per the contract, it's about 17 days, unless the listing agent counters you. And they can counter with as little as 7 to 10 days to do all of your inspections. That means home inspections. That means potential termite inspections. If there's a pool, check the pool, the jacuzzi, the pool equipment, everything, and have enough time to review the home inspection report and all of the reports, so that in case you have to request repairs, there's still enough time. If you don't do your inspections within those 10 or 17 days, you will not have a chance to do them afterwards. So make sure that the inspection gets done ASAP. Make sure that you stay on top of the lender to communicate with him or her, so that the appraisal gets ordered in a timely manner. Usually there's a deadline or timeline for the appraisal to get done. Usually it's 17 days or 14 if the listing agent counters. Another thing, failing to request extensions in writing. If you know you're going to go past 2-3 days, communicate with the listing agent immediately and put it in writing. Your TC will probably do what's called an ETA, an extension of time, and the buyer has to sign it, but we got to put the reason why we're requesting an extension. Telling the listing agent, the lender didn't order the appraisal because he or she forgot, or we need a couple of more days because I forgot to do my home inspection. Number one, it's irresponsible. Number two, it's unprofessional. Number three, you're probably not going to get the extension. So make sure that you keep that in mind. Another thing right here is allowing contingency periods to lapse without taking action. Example, you had 10 days to schedule your home inspection, and you didn't schedule it, and you didn't request an extension of time. Your buyer is going to say, hey, when are we going to do our home inspection? Now you're going to scramble and panic and call your coach, call your TC, and say, hey, nobody reminded me. Check your emails. Check your emails. Another thing is, number two, you're unclear or there's missing contingencies. Remember, contingencies are conditions or excuses that need to happen in order for a buyer to close a deal. And some of the most common contingencies are inspections. We talked about. The buyer has a certain amount of days to do their inspections. Home inspection, termite inspection, mold inspection, a survey, soil engineering, you name it. That's inspection period. If the buyer is going to buy a property and they're not buying it cash, they're going to obtain a mortgage, which means a loan. There's a loan contingency, which means that within 17 to 21 days, the lender has to have written loan approval. If that doesn't happen, you are going to be behind the 8 ball. And the listing agent is going to be blowing up your phone. Probably on the 17th day or the 21st, they're going to send you what's called a contingency removal form, removing that contingency or condition from the contract. If you don't do it that same day or the next day, you're going to get another form that's called Notice of Buyer to Perform, which means that you are in potential breach of contract. Here's your notice, and if you don't act on it, the seller has the right to cancel the contract, and potentially your buyer's deposit may be on the line. So know when your home inspection contingencies or inspection contingencies are over. How many days do you have? How long is your loan contingency? How long is your appraisal contingency? Does your buyer have to sell a home in order to buy? That's a contingency of sale. A lot of buyers have to sell their home, and that listing is contingent on them buying, and that purchase is contingent on them selling. That's a contingency. If you're not aware of those, the TC and or your coach will remind you, but you're the one that has to take massive action. I put right here, not clarifying which contingencies are waived. I've seen cases where the buyer says, you know what, it's a cash deal. I'm going to flip the property. I don't need to do an inspection. So I'm going to waive the inspection contingency. They have to be in writing. Because if the buyer changes their mind and you waive the contingency, you can't go back. I put right here, failing to specify what happens if an issue is found during the inspection. Again, you have 7 to 10 days to do your home inspection, and you find that there's some concerns, some issues that have to be addressed. If you don't address them immediately, you will be out of contract. If you have 7 to 10 days to do all of your inspections and you find that there's a major roof leak, there's plumbing issues, there's electrical issues, God forbid there's foundation issues and the house is kind of shifting, you have to get on the phone with the listing agent immediately and potentially request an extension of time. It's called ETA, because we are going to need to send somebody in to review that closely to make sure that it is safe. We don't want to put a first-time buyer with an FHA loan or a first-time buyer with a VA loan in a home that is not safe. Remember that. Leaving financial or appraisal contingencies out by mistake. What do I mean by that? I mean, if there's appraisal contingencies and you're not aware of them and the appraisal hasn't gotten done, if the appraisal wasn't ordered, or worse yet, the lender doesn't even have a copy of the purchase agreement, we are going to be out of contract. You as the buyer's agent are going to be stressing out. The listing agent is going to be blowing up your phone and threatening to cancel. Why? Because we failed to protect the client's best interest, which is our buyer, and we either waived contingencies by mistake or we overlooked the timelines. Never do that. Number 3, failure to put something in writing. I've seen this time and time again. Relying on promises that were verbal from the other side. Oh yeah, no, I already spoke with my seller. They're going to take care of it. And you're like, oh my God, this is beautiful. But they didn't put it in writing. You're going to call the listing agent and say, hey, did those repairs get done? Which ones? I don't remember that conversation. My seller never agreed to it. And if it wasn't in writing, guess what? There's no obligation. Your buyer is going to say, well, you told me that those things were going to get addressed, and I'm not moving forward unless somebody repairs it. And guess who that someone will be? You. That's going to come out of your commission, not the brokerage, not the coach, not the TC. That's your mistake. So make sure that you put everything in writing. Rely on verbal promises from the other side is a no-no. Telling your client something that will be included without documenting it. We just went over that. Oh yeah, I spoke with the listing agent. He seems very nice. And he told me, or she told me, that the seller was going to take care of that roof leak. All those wires that are in the living room, all that they'll be taken care of. And they end up not happening. When the buyer does their home inspection and they see all that stuff, they're going to say, so when is that happening? When is that getting addressed? You're going to go back to the listing agent. The listing agent is going to say, I don't remember that conversation. It's not in writing. I don't think my seller is going to take care of that. Guess who's going to be paying for the handyman or general contractor? You, out of your portion. Forgetting to draft an addendum for any changes agreed upon via text or email. If you text the listing agent, you call the listing agent, you email the listing agent, and there's an agreement, even though you have an email or a text, you got to put it in some sort of legal addendum so that seller and buyer can sign, and that addendum will go to escrow if needed, so that they know that there's going to be a credit for repairs. Repairs are going to get done, and both sides are not struggling at the last minute. Assuming handshake deals are enforceable. You might know the listing agent, you might know the buyer's agent, say, oh, they're my friend, they're awesome. They wouldn't do me dirty. We did what's called a gentleman's handshake. They promised that the deal was going to get done and that was going to get taken care of. If it's not in writing, it won't happen. Just like I tell agents, if it's not on your schedule, it will never happen. Number 4, incomplete terms on fixtures and personal property. What do I mean by that? Not specifying if appliances, washer, dryer, refrigerator will stay in the house or will they go. I've seen this time and time again, that buyer agents assume that the washer, dryer, refrigerator, and other appliances will stay. The property might have been staged. You didn't put it on the contract because you saw that they were there. Only to realize that before escrow closes, the listing agent and the seller are going to say, well, hey, I just reviewed the purchase contract and the buyers didn't request for washer, dryer, refrigerator, or the stove to stay. So let's take those to our next flip. You guys are going to do a final walkthrough maybe a week before it closes, and your buyer's going to say, what the heck happened to the appliances? You're going to panic. You're going to call the listing agent and you're going to say, hey, what happened to the appliances? He or she is going to say, you didn't request them on the purchase agreement and they were not in writing. You didn't check the boxes, so my seller had the right to take them, and they did. Guess who's going to be doing a housewarming gift of a washer, dryer, refrigerator, stove? You, the buyer agent. And remember, those mistakes are going to come out of your portion of the deal. Not your office, not your transaction coordinator, not a mentor or a coach, but you. I put right here, confusion over mounted TVs. I've seen that over and over again. Mounted TVs, water softeners, sheds, or ceiling fans. Just because they're there, it doesn't mean they're going to stay. Make sure that if there's a chandelier, a ceiling fan, 2 sheds in the back, put it on the contract. Backyard sheds to stay. 2 ceiling fans to stay. Mounted TV or TV mount to stay. Most likely they'll counter you on that one, but if you don't put it in writing, the seller has the right to remove it. Leaving the section blank or checking the wrong boxes on the contract. I've seen it time and time again. There's no boxes checked. And as a listing agent, I get those offers. I'm like, wow, they're not requesting for washer, dryer, refrigerator, stove. We were planning on leaving the TV and the TV mount, but okay, I guess my seller could take it. I'm going to tell my seller, they didn't request anything. My sellers are going to take that, and then the buyer agent is going to panic. Remember, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Rely on the MLS remarks. Just because it says on the MLS, refrigerator will stay, again, if you don't put it on the purchase agreement, the RPA, residential purchase agreement, it will not stay. And you as the buyer agent will have to make a contribution to the buyer in the form of a new refrigerator, new stove, new washer and dryer because you failed to check the boxes. So learn from this class. Make sure you watch the video over and over, take notes, because I am trying to save you not only headaches, but money. All of you work very hard to take care of your clients, but before we take care of the clients, lead generate, cold call, door knocking, so that we can get leads, we can get buyers pre-approved, open escrow, close an escrow, and hopefully there's a compensation for us. But if we don't do the necessary things and we're rushing through the process, we don't have a coach, we don't have a TC, you guys are gonna get overwhelmed, you're gonna be missing some boxes, and you're gonna pay the price at the end. And if the deal is a small deal where the commission is not that big, you might end up losing money on that deal. So pay attention. Number 5, incorrect or missing signatures and initials. One spouse signed, but the other one on title did not sign. Guess what? You will not close the deal. I've seen it happen. There's a living trust or an LLC without the proper paperwork or signing authority. If a house, a property is in a living trust, the trustee to the trust has to be the legal signer. So if we have somebody else signing, that offer, that listing is null and void. You can't enforce it. Missing initials or changed pages or counter offers. Somebody sent you a counter, you received the counter, and we didn't send those documents to escrow. Escrow doesn't know. We often blame escrow. Well, it's escrow's problem. No. Escrow is the referee in a boxing match. Is the neutral party that is not in favor of the buyer, is not in favor of the seller. They're there to make sure that nobody screws each other up. So we cannot blame escrow if we fail to provide the necessary documents. Not verifying the legal names against the title report. Mr. and Mrs. Jones called me to list the property. Okay, I got signatures from a Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Only to realize that the preliminary title report or prelim says the house is under Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez. Well, who the hell is Mr. Jones? Great question. Who is Mr. and Mrs. Jones? If you would have checked the MLS and checked the realist tax tab before going to the listing appointment, you would have known who the real and the legal owners were. So verify the legal names before you get signatures. Number 6, poor handling of addendums and counteroffers. I've also seen that. Canceling a prior offer before sending a new counter. If a property was in escrow and somebody canceled, believe it or not, you still have to have a cancellation of escrow from the previous buyer in order to open a new escrow. Remember, you can't sell the same house to 2 different buyers. Leaving multiple versions of terms floating around. There's a lot of verbiage that's kind of vague, kind of up in the air, kind of like, I wonder what they meant with that. Make sure that everything is clear, easy to read, easy to understand. Accepting a counter, but not initialing the terms. The buyer signs the counter, accepting it, but they didn't initial. You're gonna have a headache before the deal closes, if it even closes. Contradictions between the main contract and the addendum. Example, seller to pay buyer's closing costs not to exceed 3%. But then the seller counters and says, I'm only gonna pay 2%, and I'm only gonna pay the buyer's commission 2% instead of 3%. And then you tell your buyer that the seller was gonna take care of all the closing costs. No, they're not. They're only gonna take care of 2%. So if there's anything over that 2%, the buyer's gonna pay for it. And then they're gonna say, well, wait a minute, why am I paying $2,900 of closing costs? You said that the seller was gonna take care of all my costs. You didn't say that they counter. So I am not wiring the rest of my money until we figure this out. And because most of us don't prospect or lead generate, you guys are gonna get desperate and you're gonna say, I really need the paycheck. Fine, escrow. Take that $2,900 out of my check. Well, guess what that $2,900 is gonna come from? Your portion of the commission, not your brokerage, not the franchise fee, not your transaction coordinator's fee, not the mentoring and coaching fee, your fee. So you might be working for free. Number 7, not verifying financial details. What do I mean by that? I've seen this in my almost 21 years. Writing an offer that's conventional when the buyer is an FHA. I've also seen FHA offers that were written as cash. I've seen offers that were written as FHA without proof of funds or an approval letter. Not understanding the VA appraisal or repairs if you're representing a VA client. Buyer not being pre-approved, only pre-qualified. There's a big difference. And all of you should understand the difference between getting pre-qualified and being pre-approved. All of you should be doing a video educating the consumer on the difference between being pre-qualified and being pre-approved. Because a lot of buyers on social media, and even when we meet them, they're like, oh, no, I'm good, I'm pre-qualified, I'm ready to go. Well, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, can I shed some information with both of you on what the difference is between getting pre-qualified and getting pre-approved? Can I share some of my thoughts? Because I study the market on a regular basis. Being pre-qualified is, you go on the computer, go to a Rocket Mortgage website, and you put that you make $20,000 a month. My FICO score is 800. I've been at the job for 20 years. Based on that information, I'm qualified for $1.2 million. Rocket Mortgage hasn't verified employment. They haven't done a VOE. They haven't checked my taxes. They haven't run my credit. That's a pre-qualified buyer. Pre-approval is they've already done a VOE. They've checked your credit. They calculated your debt to income ratio. They've done everything as far as outweighing the pros and cons. It's already been underwritten. You have underwritten approval, and the only thing that's missing is a property and an appraisal. That's somebody that you want to work with. Not understanding, obviously, VA appraisals, not being approved, forgetting to disclose where the down payment sources and reserves are coming from. Always ask your buyer, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, where's our down payment coming from? Is it a gift? Is it your 401k? Is it mattress money? Is it cash? Because if it's cash, guess what? We have to deposit it in the bank, and it has to be sourced for at least 60 days. So if you're trying to put an offer now, or worse yet, you're in escrow and your down payment and potential closing cost is coming from mattress money, we may not be able to close escrow. Have those conversations with the lender as well, so that the lender can also educate your buyers. Number 8, overlooking HOA and community documents. If your buyer's buying a property that's within an HOA, gated community, one of the mistakes is failing to provide HOA documents within contract deadlines. The listing agent and escrow and everybody involved from the listing side has approximately 7 to 10 days, they don't always do it, to provide HOA documents, what's called the CC and Rs, which are the restrictions, covenants, and the bylaws of the HOA community, the do's and don'ts, what you can and cannot do. And the buyer has to have enough time to review them. How much is the HOA? Can I paint the house pink? Can I change the plans that are here? Can I plant a mango tree in the front? You probably can't. Not disclosing HOA fees, transfer doc fees, or any restriction that the community has. The buyer has to be made aware, and the buyer has to have enough time to review and make an informative decision. Buyers canceling after discovering that the bylaws were not what they thought they would be, and they disliked some of the rules and regulations. Late HOA doc delivery by giving buyers automatic cancellation rights. Hey, I'm going to send them to you on the last day, and if you don't approve them within an hour, I'm canceling. Well, we never gave the buyers enough time to review them because you send them late, Mr. or Mrs. Listing Agent. Number 9, ignoring repair request. If you're the listing agent and you get a notice to a request for repairs and you don't present it to your seller because your ego is getting the best of you, you're like, oh my God, this is garbage. We're canceling. Are you a party to the transaction? Are you the seller or the buyer? No. Then check your ego at the door. present the request for repairs and let the seller or sellers decide what they want to do. Writing vague terms like seller to repair roof with no specifics. Are they replacing the entire roof? Are they repairing a few shingles? What are they doing? Not clarifying if the work must be done by a licensed contractor. Because what if the seller hires a handyman for $50 and they don't do a good job? The buyer's gonna be like, wait a minute, you guys are cutting corners. I'm buying a $700,000 house. No, I don't want cheap stuff, because guess what? In 2-3 months, I am gonna have to redo this, and now it's gonna be my bill. So make sure you clarify who's gonna be doing the work. Forgetting to specify if we're giving the buyer a credit or we're actually doing the repairs. A lot of times, I see time and time again, nothing's specified, and we just kind of leave it up in the air and be like, well, we'll worry about it later. No, worry about it now. Disputes over quality of repairs. Again, we talked about the handyman or the general contractor. The buyer goes out to check the work and there's no estimate. Who did the work? Oh, my cousin Johnny. He did the work after his work. You know, he came in after 5 and kind of somewhat painted, somewhat took care of the mold. And the buyer's like, no, I'm paying $700,000 for this. I want somebody that's gonna validate and guarantee their work. The seller's trying to be cheap. The sellers are trying to cut corners, but you want somebody to pay $700,000 plus for your house, and you can't even pay $200? What if the seller was the buyer? How would you feel? Number 10, last but not least, not reviewing escrow instructions against the contract. Escrow officers are humans. Mistakes will be made. And if that happens, don't start pointing the finger and say, oh my God, escrow screwed up, I will never use them again. Really? We are humans, we all make mistakes. Just own up to them and say, hey, listen, I kind of forgot this part, but I'm owning up to it. What needs to happen? Assuming that the escrow officer's version matches the contract. Never assume, especially in real estate. Not reviewing the prorations of taxes, credits, or fees. Who's charging who what? The buyer has to pay for this. Did they know? The seller has to pay for this. Was it clarified? You can't assume. You shouldn't assume. Letting escrow insert fees that conflict with the agreement. Escrow should only charge for services rendered. Failing to confirm that both sides sign the same matching escrow instructions. Buyers are going to have their own escrow instructions. Sellers are going to have their own escrow instructions. And basically, escrow instructions are a summary of what everybody agreed to buy or sell. Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez are buying 123 Main Street in Lake Elsinore for $750,000. Mr. and Mrs. Jones agree to transfer title of 123 Main Street to Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez. Close of escrow to be honored before October 29th. Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez to obtain an FHA loan. Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez to wire their deposit of $10,000 within 2 business days. Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez to wire the rest of their $27,000 of down payment before escrow closes. Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez, the buyers, cannot move into the house before it closes. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the sellers, have to disclose all material facts about the property and have to sign the grant deed before we close. The sellers have to vacate the property. So there's do's and don'ts, responsibilities of both sides. And escrow is there to make sure that both parties do what they promised each other. Those are the 10 real estate contract mistakes that will kill your deal. Hopefully this class was helpful for those that were here in attendance. Thank you all for joining us. For those that are going to be watching the video on Facebook, on YouTube, thank you so much. If you like the video, please hit the follow button, the like button, share the link, watch it over and over again so that when you open your next escrow, none of these things happen to you. This was Ulysses Vega, productivity coach, real estate broker. Thank you so much for watching.